I'd say that's more a property of me picking a topic that I'm deeply, deeply interested in. If I had picked a topic that I thought maybe would sell, but I wasn't personally interested in, it would have been excruciating. But I'm just as enthusiastic about the topic and theme as I was when we started. And at that point, it's more just a matter of kind of enjoying the process of going through it. You know, really, I've spent about the same amount of time on Spore as I did on The Sims. I think, you know, if you're going through the same story of evolution, intelligence, civilization, and then eventually out into space that we've gone through, but you're seeing it from, let's say, an alien's point of view, it almost gives you a better perspective on, you know, what it means to be human, I think. You know, kind of seeing these possibly invariant things, how important, you know, learning to use tools might be, not just to humans, but to another alien. I think in some sense it's a way of stepping back from humanity and getting a broader sense of our journey. I'd probably best be described as an atheist. Although I'm open to the idea that there was some creator somewhere. I could almost envision humans one day being able to create a micro-universe. You know, that's not to say that we could ever interact with it, but it could be that the physics equations for singularity are the same as for the Big Bang. So at that level, I'm open to the idea that our universe was created. But, you know, probably there's not a guy with a long white beard, you know, looking at every little thing we do. We did Spore, we didn't want to go too far down that path. We leave the whole, you know, creation of the universe question open. Obviously, as the player, you're coming in and playing something like a god, directing the evolution of the species, but we never really state who you, the player, are. I didn't expect to be, to hit hot buttons on the atheist side as much. I expected to hit it more on the religious side, but so far I've had no critical feedback at all from anybody who's religious, feeling that we were, you know, misrepresenting religion, or it was bad to represent religion in the game. It was really the atheists. Gamers, you know, kind of liked being this renegade group, and the games were so complex that nobody would touch them, and that their parents hated them, and all this stuff. But the fact that they're actually breaking out, and their sisters are playing games, and their parents are playing games, and stuff like that, it almost feels like a reactionary. I mean, I've seen a lot of these threads where I read about, you know, players talking about different games or whatever, and there's definitely this kind of hardcore mentality from players when they see games like maybe the Wii or whatever, and they feel like it's diluted, you know, what a game should be, and it should be this hardcore experience where you're wearing headphones and bragging your friends, you know, online. But I think that's a good sign, though. I mean, I think it's great that, you know, the games are breaking out of that kind of niche, small, kind of insular group. In the game design side, you know, we've put way too much emphasis on linear storytelling, embedding that in our games. A lot of people talk about, you know, what's the story in this game, or who the characters, stuff like that. When inherently, I think games should be a much more user-driven experience, where the user is unfolding the story, and we give them more creative opportunities. That's not to say the game shouldn't have story. I just think the story should be the player's story, and we should find more ways to celebrate and promote that, rather than the game designer story that you're imposing upon them. So I think games creatively are just now getting enough kind of sure-footedness and enough technology underneath them to give the player that freedom. Well, I think the reason I was driven to what Spore ended up becoming was the fact that we had, you know, a lot of games out there that were single-player experiences, unconnected. We had a lot of other games over here that were massively multiplayer experiences, and there was nothing in between the two. But yet there's a really interesting space of hybrids between the two that Spore became, where you have, you know, a lot of players connected through content, but it's not synchronous. It's asynchronous interactions. When you design a massively multiplayer game, you have to bite off a lot of major design limitations. Like, you know, nobody can pause the game. Nobody can cheat. You know, you usually have to pay a subscription, monthly fee. But the meantime, the biggest benefit I saw from that was the possibility of having a collaboratively built world that's huge and always surprising. And so for Spore, we try to figure out how do we get the best aspects of a massively multiplayer game without all these huge design limitations. The graphics power of those things is, you know, probably the chief attraction to them. You know, and the fact that they now, it used to be the game consoles had all these limitations compared to computers, like, you know, no hard drive storage, low-res displays, et cetera, no connectivity. And one by one, they've kind of knocked down, you know, at least equalized most of those advantages. So I see the creative opportunity on the major consoles like the 360 and PS3 as being pretty roughly similar to the PC space now. A lot of other projects that have been kind of waiting in the wings that I've been doing early research on, you know, that when Spore ships, I'm just going to take a deep breath, sit back and look at these projects and kind of consider, which ones to dive into. I think, I kind of like the idea of having a range of projects, maybe, some very short term and maybe one very long term, It's kind of nice to have things a little bit out of cycle. I think it would be interesting to go into space for a little bit. At the same time, I've thought about it enough to realize that, you're going to be in a tin can, and depending on whether it's suborbital or orbital, how much you can actually enjoy the experience. The view would be really nice for a short while. You'd be weightless for a few minutes. That's suborbital. I think orbital sounds a lot more kind of exciting to some degree. Well, I've been trying to think about Spore, less as a product and more as a franchise or a brand, and looking at moving it in all possible directions. Whereas The Sims, we were kind of expanding The Sims vertically. We kept selling expansion packs to the same customers over and over. I think Spore, we want to look horizontally. We want to say, what kind of other experiences, activities, formats, media can we bring Spore out? And at that point, you have to say, what's the brand mean? And that's where we've been thinking about Spore is kind of this brand that's the intersection of creativity and science. I think science is inherently kind of an interesting thing. A lot of times, it's not presented that interestingly. If you look at documentaries on cable television, if you're into that science, it's kind of fun to watch the documentary. And there's some pretty good science shows for kids, but there aren't that many kind of fast-paced, really intelligent, very visual science things for adults that feel like entertainment. And so that's kind of the direction I want Spore to move in.